about 3 years old, maybe 3 and a half, the day they found him wandering down this lonely road in Yunnan. But he was old enough to be scared of soldiers. For soldiers to Joe meant bayonets and a burning house, and his mother lying very still beside it. No, at first Joe didn't see the difference between Jap uniforms and ours. But the old farmer who reminded him of his grandfather knew the difference. Somehow, when the GIs from the nearby 14th Air Force Bomber Base began talking to Joe, and finally scooped him up and put him in their chariot, which they called a jeep, he began to understand too. These soldiers were friends. They took Joe back to their base and presented him to their company commander. The interview was pretty frightening. A lot of talk about something called a TO and whether there was room for Joe in it. Finally, the captain said there was always room for a good man. Everybody seemed pretty happy. All except Joe. Was it good or bad to get in a TO? Joe decided it was good, for he found himself with a couple of hundred fathers taking turns knocking themselves out over him. And then he found himself decked out in some extra fancy issue, getting a special assignment from the company commander. And it was a pretty important assignment, as anyone could see. The first sergeant sat here. Right next to him sat his assistant, Joe, called Tiger because he was fierce. Yeah, that's how the story of Tiger Joe began. And Joe, like all the kids adopted by GIs the world over, became just about the most important man in the company. They had given Joe a home, but at the same time, he had succeeded in bringing their home a couple of thousand miles nearer. There's something about teaching a 3-year-old how to use a knife and fork that can remind a man of more good things than all the movies and magazines in the world. And every night when Joe was put to bed in an army bunk instead of a baby's crib, his foster fathers would remember some of the reasons why they were soldiers, fighting a half a world away from their own homes and their own families. But it wasn't all easy going for Joe by any means. Like the rest of the company, he had his soldiering to do too. When they stood inspections, there was Joe standing very straight and dressing on the guy next to him. An assistant first sergeant has to set an example for his men. No matter how hard the CO inspected, somehow Joe never got a gig. Well, this is about the end of Tiger Joe's story. Maybe it isn't a very important story. Then again, maybe it is. Because maybe Tiger Joe is one of the reasons we're fighting this war. So that in generations to come, other little Joes will be running home from school instead of tagging behind a platoon of soldiers.